They called it The Longest Day, and they weren't exaggerating. In 1962, Hollywood decided to rebuild D-Day, the most massive invasion in human history, using real soldiers, real ships, and real beaches. No CGI, no green screens, just chaos, mud, and explosions filmed by 3 different directors at once. It was the kind of project that could only exist in that fearless era of filmmaking. Part historical tribute, part cinematic insanity. Veterans relived their trauma, actors froze in the Atlantic, and the studio nearly went broke trying to control a movie that felt more like an actual war. So grab your helmet, because these are 16 strange, shocking, and fascinating facts about The Longest Day, 1962, the movie that tried to remake D-Day and almost didn't survive the battle. Number 1. The most expensive black and white movie ever made. When The Longest Day went into production, 20th Century Fox treated it less like a film and more like a military campaign. The studio poured in an unprecedented $7.75 million, a fortune in 1962, nearly $80 million today. Everything about the movie was real. Real tanks, real planes, real ships. The studio rented fleets from the French and British navies, shipped equipment across the channel, and even drew curious headlines when locals thought another invasion was happening. Despite being filmed in black and white, it looked and felt bigger than any color epic of its time. Every explosion was physical, every beach filled with real people. It became the highest-grossing black and white movie ever made, proving that raw authenticity can outshine color spectacle.
We're starting the war from right here. Head inland. We're going inland.
Okay, let's go.
Number 2. 3 directors, 1 battlefield. Most films barely survive having 1 director. The Longest Day had 3, each commanding their own cinematic army. Ken Anakin directed the British and French scenes. Andrew Martin oversaw the American invasion, and Bernhard Wicki, a German filmmaker, handled the Axis perspective. Each director worked with their own crew, their own translators, and their own stretch of coastline. At one point, the production had 5 separate units shooting simultaneously across Europe, a logistical nightmare that required daily reports to track who was filming what. There were constant communication breakdowns. Anakin would film a bombing run that accidentally destroyed part of Martin's set. Wicki, frustrated by Hollywood's approach, rewrote his own dialogue to better reflect the German mindset. Yet when editor Samuel Beck finally assembled the pieces, everything fit together perfectly. It was chaotic, expensive, and often improvised. But somehow, the madness created a masterpiece.
North by east, Amerigleese is that way. Somebody's turned that sign around. Doesn't anybody in this outfit look at a compass besides me?
Number 3. An army made of real soldiers. Instead of hiring actors to pretend, the production called in real troops. About 750 active duty servicemen from the US and British armies were assigned to the set, some of them fresh out of training. These men didn't need coaching on how to run, reload, or dive for cover. It was second nature. Their movements weren't rehearsed. They were instinctive. When explosions hit, they reacted exactly as soldiers would. Even between takes, discipline ruled. They ate in military mess lines, saluted officers, and even held impromptu drills while waiting for cues. Watching the film today, you can feel it. The line between reenactment and reality blurs until it's impossible to tell who's acting and who's remembering. Number 4. Filmed on the real battlefields of Normandy. Most war movies fake their landscapes. The Longest Day went straight to the real beaches where D-Day happened. The crew filmed on or near Sainte-Mère-Église, Ouistreham, and Pegasus Bridge, places still scarred from the invasion. Old bunkers were reopened, shrapnel was still buried in the sand, and rusted machine gun nests were converted into camera positions. Local families watched with tears in their eyes as uniformed soldiers once again flooded the shoreline. Some even recognized the exact houses they'd hidden in during the real invasion. For the filmmakers, it was like shooting inside a living museum. Every gust of sea wind, every bell tolling from the church tower was authentic. When veterans saw the final cut, many said the sound of waves and boots on the sand felt exactly the same as it had in 1944. Few films have ever captured that eerie sense of history reliving itself in real time. Number 5. A cast so big, it looked like a roll call. When the credits roll, it feels less like a movie and more like an awards ceremony. Over 40 international stars assembled for The Longest Day, forming one of the most impressive ensembles in film history. John Wayne, Henry Fonda, Richard Burton, Robert Mitchum, Sean Connery, Peter Lawford, Rod Steiger, and dozens of others shared the screen. The production had so many famous faces that some appeared for only seconds, just enough to give the impression that every corner of Hollywood had enlisted. Casting director Robert Fryer joked that he spent more time negotiating egos than contracts. To avoid overshadowing the story, the filmmakers divided the roles so no single actor dominated the narrative. Even legends like Wayne and Fonda were just pieces of a much bigger picture. The result was something rare, a true ensemble where no one star mattered more than the mission itself.
I don't have to tell you the score, you all know it. Only two kinds of people are gonna stay on this beach. Those that are already dead and those that are gonna die. Now get off your butts. You guys are the fight 29.
Number 6. The soldier who reenacted his own D-Day. Among the film's many famous names, Richard Todd held one distinction no one else could match. He had actually fought in the real battle. In 1944, Todd parachuted into Normandy with the 6th Airborne Division and took part in the Pegasus Bridge Assault, the very operation he later portrayed on screen. 18 years later, he walked those same fields again, this time as an actor, correcting details from memory. How men crouched, where they landed, when they fired. Watching him perform feels eerie, like a ghost guiding his younger self. Few films in history have ever captured a moment where the actor and the historical figure are essentially the same man.
It's only a matter of time before they counterattack.
What about the paratroopers?
Para might not get here for hours. Lovett and his commandos. It could be midday before they get here. Question is, how long can we hold?
Number 7. The coldest rebellion in movie history. The Omaha Beach landing scene was supposed to be another day of filming. Instead, it turned into a miniature mutiny. At sunrise, hundreds of extras stood at the edge of the Atlantic, waiting for the cue to charge. But when the director yelled action, they didn't move. The water was near freezing, the tide stronger than expected, and no one wanted to risk hypothermia. Crew members pleaded, but the men refused. Then Robert Mitchum, playing Brigadier General Norman Cota, crushed his cigarette into the sand and charged headfirst into the surf, shouting for the others to follow. Cameras caught everything: the chaos, the shock, the hesitation that turned into momentum. Those expressions of panic and determination you see on screen aren't acting, they're genuine. What was supposed to be a carefully choreographed moment became a raw display of leadership and human willpower, and it gave the scene its legendary power. Number 8. 66 hours of war. By the end of production, The Longest Day had generated 66 hours of footage, more than most TV shows produce in a year. Every landing, explosion, and paratrooper drop was filmed from multiple angles. Assistant directors joked that they'd invaded Normandy twice. In the editing room, reels stacked up like ammunition boxes. It took months to carve those 66 hours into a 3-hour runtime. Entire subplots were deleted, alternate endings scrapped. Only about 5% of what was filmed survived the final cut. Somewhere in Fox's archives lies a forgotten version of the invasion, one the world never saw. By now, you can tell The Longest Day wasn't just a movie. It was a military operation disguised as filmmaking. Real soldiers, real beaches, and chaos so authentic that even the actors forgot where the acting ended. If you love this kind of deep dive into movie madness, the stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction, make sure to subscribe and stick around. We've got monsters, disasters, and cinematic miracles coming every single week. Now, grab your helmet, because the second half of this story is where things really start to explode. Number 9. Shot in black and white, by choice, not budget. Color was the Hollywood standard in 1962, but The Longest Day went monochrome for realism. Director Ken Anakin wanted the film to resemble wartime newsreel footage. Black and white captured the grit, the smoke, and the stark light of explosions better than color ever could. The choice also helped unify footage shot by 3 directors in 3 countries. No color grading, no mismatched skies, just pure consistency. The result feels timeless. Critics called it the last great black and white epic, and decades later, filmmakers still study its contrast and texture. Proof that sometimes the absence of color reveals the truth of history. Number 10. A movie that spoke 3 languages. While most Hollywood films demanded English, The Longest Day went for authenticity over convenience. It was filmed in English, French, and German, mirroring the multilingual confusion of real warfare. Every actor spoke their native tongue. The Germans delivered clipped, disciplined orders. The French resistance whispered rapid, anxious plans. The Americans yelled commands over gunfire. Translators, dialect coaches, and military advisors moved between sets like diplomats. Scenes often had to be filmed twice, once for clarity, once for rhythm, because the directors wanted every accent, pause, and inflection to sound true. The risk was huge. Audiences might have rejected subtitles or lost interest. Instead, the film's linguistic realism became one of its greatest strengths. It gave the battle its sound, a wall of overlapping voices that made viewers feel they were standing right in the middle of D-Day's chaos. Number 11. Different countries, different versions. Because of its multilingual nature, 20th Century Fox released different versions of the movie worldwide. French theaters got full French dialogue. German audiences heard authentic German without dubbing. and Americans saw a subtitled blend of all three. Some scenes were reshot entirely for language accuracy, and multiple audio tracks were edited by hand. It was the first time a war film truly spoke to every nation involved in D-Day, not as enemies, but as participants in the same colossal event. That choice made The Longest Day a global success and earned it respect on both sides of history. Number 12. When Hollywood egos went to war. Off the battlefield, the explosions were made of ego. John Wayne was furious when he learned he'd be paid only $250,000, far below his usual fee. He reportedly demanded his scenes be filmed alone, so he'd still feel like a leading man. Meanwhile, Robert Mitchum shrugged it off, joking that the real war was trying to get everyone's trailers onto the same beach. And then there was Sean Connery, a young, broke actor who took a tiny role just to pay rent. Months later, he'd debut as James Bond in Dr. No. By the time The Longest Day hit theaters, Connery had gone from expendable extra to international icon, proving even D-Day couldn't stop 007. Number 13. Critics called it a masterpiece and a marathon. When The Longest Day premiered, audiences were blown away, but critics were split. Some hailed it as the most realistic war epic ever filmed. Others said it felt like a 3-hour briefing. The New Yorker claimed it was technically brilliant, emotionally distant, but ticket sales told a different story. Theaters stayed packed for months, often with intermissions like a Broadway show. Veterans watched in silence, reliving the invasion through art. By the end of its run, The Longest Day had earned over $50 million, transforming skepticism into legend. The critics were divided, but history wasn't. This movie had conquered. Number 14. The Oscars were just the beginning. At the 1963 Academy Awards, The Longest Day earned 5 nominations and won 2 Oscars: Best Cinematography, Black and White, and Best Special Effects. Those effects weren't miniatures or tricks, they were real detonations. The explosions were planned by former military engineers, timed with precision down to the second. Some were so powerful, they cracked tripods and sent sand blasting into the camera lenses. Hollywood realized that realism itself could be special effects. After The Longest Day, every major war film borrowed from its template, proving that truth, not technology, is what makes destruction unforgettable. Number 15. The blueprint for every D-Day movie after it. Before Saving Private Ryan, before Dunkirk, there was The Longest Day, the film that wrote the visual grammar of modern war cinema. Steven Spielberg studied it shot by shot before directing Saving Private Ryan, borrowing its wide invasion frames, chaotic cross-cutting, and alternating perspectives between generals and foot soldiers. Even the handheld panic of Band of Brothers traces back to the groundwork laid here. The film's use of multiple viewpoints, the Allied command, the soldiers on the sand, the German officers reacting in confusion, became the template for every large-scale battle movie that followed. But beyond technique, it changed tone. War was no longer romantic or sanitized. It was procedural, massive, and terrifyingly real. Every bullet, every order, every mistake mattered. The Longest Day didn't just depict D-Day, it defined how the world would remember it, both on screen and in imagination. Number 16. Veterans relived their own invasion. The most haunting fact? Many of the men on screen had actually been there in 1944. Fox hired real D-Day veterans as extras and consultants. Some reenacted the same landings they'd survived 18 years earlier. When explosions erupted, a few froze in shock. One French villager even pointed at a crater and said quietly, "That one's mine. It's been here since the war." For audiences, it was breathtaking cinema. For those veterans, it was something else. Closure, maybe, or just another mission. The Longest Day didn't just recreate D-Day. For some, it helped them face it one last time. The Longest Day isn't just a war movie. It's a monument made of film stock, sweat, and memory. Every explosion, every shout, every grain of sand came from people who lived the story they were telling. 3 directors, thousands of extras, and enough military power to start a real invasion, all working to capture one day that changed the world. 6 decades later, it still stands as the blueprint for every war epic that followed. So next time someone mentions Saving Private Ryan, remember, before CGI and handheld cameras, there was The Longest Day, a movie so massive it made history twice. And if you love discovering the madness behind cinematic legends, you know what to do. Subscribe, because there's always another story waiting behind the smoke.